live. So, hello, Ian. Can you hear me?
Yeah, hey, how's it going?
Hey, good. So, right on time, right on time. Like a Swiss watch, like we are like exactly on time. So, first, I want to say hi to everybody who's joining us. I can see people are, oh, Roberto from Puerto Rico, and I have Olivia from London. Please, guys, say hi and, say where you're from. Just say hello to one another. We are a small colorist community, so let's go and introduce ourselves to each other. Uh, Fantastic. Oh my God, I can see Kurdistan is with us as well, and Zay from New York. Hello, very good to see you guys again. This is fantastic. This is great. I, as you can see, I'm in a little bit different setting today than that you see me usually, and the reason for that is because a friend of mine has a little, like a cottage in the mountains in a Big Bear, which is close to Los Angeles, and I decided that it would be cool for my family, my little daughter, my wife, and my dog to escape LA for a few days. So, the beauty of remote working is that we are actually here in the mountain and doing the meetup, so it's also fantastic. And I'm so happy that I can introduce you today to Ian. And I have actually a huge amount of respect for Ian for what he has done. And it's like something I just really wanted to explain to you why, Ian is very special. And but before I just can see like a lots of highs. Hello, guys, Sandipan. Very good to see you. And then Mexico. Very good. There's always joke that we always, when we grade movies from Mexico, always make them very hot and warm. But actually, when you go to Mexico, it doesn't look like that at all. I always joke about that. And then we have a Manny. Hello, Manny. Good. And somebody from Johannesburg. And Brandon. Hey, Brandon. Very good. Very good to see you. Fantastic, fantastic. I'm just waiting for a few more people to join in, for us, to, and certainly like people are dialing in, and then we're starting. But what I was saying is this: when you have a desire to become a colorist and become like a top colorist, there are two paths that you can take in life, generally, I believe. So one path is that you kind of start as an assistant working for some other big colorist, and then you work for that person and you get trained up, and then hopefully you get a seat at that company, which is hopefully a big company in Hollywood, and then somehow you start getting bigger clients, and with that you grow into the ranks of being one of the top colorists in Hollywood. And that's certainly a kind of a path that most people have had to take. But what is very special about Ian, which is that he has taken a path that hasn't been threaded much before, and he has actually proven that it's possible to be like your own kind of boss, so to say, and control your own destiny. And from the moment when he started his first post-production company with Michael Cioni called Plaster City, it's been many years, but he has never given up on his dream, and today he's one of the top 10 colorists in Los Angeles. And what makes him, so good is that actually he has not just worked on big movies, but he has created a variety of amazing looks. He has never been a colorist who just had this one style that people would come and just ask for that. But he's so good in understanding what is the story, what needs to be done, and how to do it. And you can really see this from his work that movies are like so beautifully, like the looks are adapted to actual stories. And I have selected 3 of his most recent jobs that are actually best showcasing that skill and ability. And I'm so happy that Ian has agreed and has taken some time off from his busy schedule to talk to us and maybe explain a little bit about this process. But before we start with that, Ian, I would like to ask you like a first welcome. That's number one.
Thank you. No, it's fun. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Good. No, I look, Ian, it's amazing, that you give up your time for us, for the community. And I think, as there are very limited resources. Once you there's lots of YouTube videos that's going to teach you how to use DaVinci Resolve, for example. And there's some YouTubers that wear a hat like this and hat like that will pretend that they're going to teach you something. But in reality, when you become professional, there's very little resources that will really teach you how to become very good in what you're doing. Because those guys who make videos, they're not really professional colorists. They don't really have the real skills, that they can teach us. So, these meetups are really like a way for us to understand and in which direction to build our skills. And what I really wanted to highlight about you is the fact that, you have started like without any big name colorists helping you with that. You really have built yourself up, and you really have also invented somehow your workflow. You didn't just copy and do things. You have actually, when I spoke to you how you work, I find it extremely unique, the way how you work. And also I like it that because, like one thing that you experience when you go to a big facility where you would normally expect one of the top 10 guys to work, you would experience this kind of army of color scientists that would come and talk to you how they spent last days calibrating something and making some profiles and this and that. Yet you're the guy, for example, who made probably one of the most popular red LUTs ever, which is the light iron LUT that everybody uses when it became like a standard 709 LUT. So you actually said, no, I don't need the color scientist there to, I'm going to make one. And you made it amazingly well as well, So I kind of really love that. I love it that you just didn't really feel like, oh, I have to work in the same way how everybody else works, the big iron, right? Heavy iron.
Yep.
And I'm gonna do it with a light iron style. But let's rewind back. I understand you started studying photography, isn't it?
Yeah. So yeah, that was kind of my first like introduction to the visual arts is really just still photography, photochemical. My uncle handed me down a Pentax 1000 35 millimeter camera when I was like 10, and I just went around and took photos, all through high school and college, and I didn't really get too much into video. I mean, like, I've known Michael. You mentioned Michael. Michael and I met in 3rd grade. So we were making videos together in high school, like shooting our track team and stuff like that. But I was really involved in photography, all through high school and college. And then it was really when I started teaching myself After Effects in college that I really that's when I really got into like kind of like digital image manipulation and visual effects and color grading in whatever version that was, in college with After Effects, you kind of start color grading kind of, and that was my first introduction into it. I didn't even know what a colorist was.
Yeah, but I agree. But that was the way how you were actually really able to do stuff. I agree totally. That was the first thing we were able to do.
Yeah, and it's funny because I was never, I loved photography, but like I was never the guy that would always go out, and like I was way more interested in going to the darkroom and playing with the printer and playing with the chemistry and just playing with the enlarger and doing all that kind of stuff and those different visual effects where you would dodge and burn one negative onto another and double expose, like doing all the kind of the weird stuff that we do all the time now in DI. I was always wanting to do that, in the darkroom, and I was never the kind of guy that was always out shooting. So it's interesting that instead of like going into cinematography, I ended up going into color.
Yeah. Good. So basically, you arrived into Los Angeles, and you and Michael start Plaster City, and this was exactly the time when I came to LA. Maybe you were open already for it. There was only two companies that were doing what you guys were doing, because you started something that we're calling desktop video revolution or something like that. There was a term. Michael was always good in making this kind of amazing, marketing terms that were just like, that's a good name for what we're doing. So, and there was another company I think was called Digital Film Tree. Rami was doing that.
Rami, yeah.
And I actually saw that they were using the still Final Touch, and I came here to learn DaVinci, but I was super disappointed because all they taught me was how to operate DaVinci. Nobody taught me how to grade, right? They were like, this is just how you dial, and I was like, but okay, but Anyway, so I realized, well, actually, I don't need like all the money that DaVinci costs. I can just buy this. And this is what inspired me really to go back to London and start. What you guys were doing was like a real inspiration eye-opener for me. You were like literally like going like, oh my God, this is possible to do. And Plaster City was a huge success, I remember. I mean, this company just grew and grew, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we stuck with it for about 6 years before we started Light Iron. And yeah, I mean, that was the Wild West. That's when people were still shooting on PAL and converting it to 24. I mean, like every job was like the craziest thing. And like you think about it now, and you're just like, wait, you would shoot on PAL, or you would shoot on like 2997 interlaced, and then you would run it through this program called Magic Bullet to get it to 24. Like every job was like the craziest workflow. And like remember there was like 24p 24pa that you would shoot on the Panasonic. I mean, like everything was insane.
Yeah.
And like it's so like it's hard now, but it's like just to think about those early transition days where we were going out, we were transitioning out of film, getting into digital. It was still largely tape based. There was all these kind of weird hacks to get to a digital cinema. And it was, I mean, it was the Wild West, and it was just constantly changing and constantly evolving. So a company, to be successful during that time, really had to be nimble and light on their feet. And I think a lot of the success that we had is because we were so small and trying to do big things, that we were able to react so much faster than the larger companies. Like they had their pipeline, they had the way they had their tried and true and tested formula. But then if a filmmaker wanted to do something a little nutty, they couldn't go to the big company, because that wouldn't work with their infrastructure.
No, and the fact is that actually that era actually gave a birth to big directors and cinematographers that are, not ruling, but they are the ones who created the most interesting things today, because they came out of that, attitude of experimentation, invention, and creation. And they have helped, the whole cinematography from creative point of view to evolve as well. So I bet, that these
Definitely.
people you were working back then are still pretty good clients for you today.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, what happened then? Then you started Light Iron, and I think the Light Iron originally had a interesting twist that you were wanting to do a lot of things on set. I think with the Outpost or something like that, and
Yeah, that was kind of 2009. So that was like that was like the peak, or one of the peaks of on-set dailies. And so on-set dailies isn't quite as popular now, but at the time it was pretty popular, because you would get such a fast turnaround on dailies, and that was always a challenge. Of course, with film, it would be like multiple days, and the fact that you could within hours get your data turned around, it was huge, and it was a massive boon to a lot of these productions. We actually ran dailies like side by side with larger companies at the time. So like, there was some productions where they would go to the big company to get their normal dailies, but then they would have us just to like turn around dailies quicker. So like, they would use our dailies for like the first 2 days. And then after the third day, when the bigger company had, supplied their dailies, then they would switch over. So it's like they were just doing it double. But it worked great for us, because it got us into the door to talk to a lot of these major studios, and we were just a dozen people at the time.
yeah.
So
I actually remember we had in London one client who worked with your daily system, and they did their job with the deluxe at that time, and it's been a while now, right? So I'm pretty sure deluxe to daily is better than that. But what happened was it took them really 3 days. Like I think because they even had some USB 2 connections only on their computer. I remember it was a story like that you wouldn't believe, and and then. And I remember after the first 2 days or 3 days, basically my phone rang and said, "Listen, I just did a job, with Gioni, who basically gave me dailies in a day. Can you help me do the same thing here?" And I was like, "Yeah, of course. We have cards." And I had people that we were training at that time, the first DITs kind of, And we were like, "Okay, guys, let's go," and we set it up. And I remember that literally people would come and use what you were doing as a reference. Like, "Okay, they've been doing it like this. Can you make the same thing for us here in the UK?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." So I know that it was a very, very revolutionary what you were doing. But at the same time, Ian, it even though it wasn't so much publicized, what you were doing for Light Iron is something much more important, which was that with your work as a colorist, you were really building up a reputation of a company from this kind of creative perspective as well.
Hmm.
And I think, this is not something that we should kind of ignore, because, today, Light Iron is competing amongst the biggest facilities in LA. And you are one of the, top 10, 100%. And it's just because you worked your ass off doing like some really, really cool movies. So what was the kind of I think, what was the first one that really was the breakthrough?
Social Network in 2010 was probably the big. I mean, that was, David really being kind of the maverick that he is. He saw the potential of shooting with the red camera, and then and just shooting digitally in general. And doing the DI of Social Network was, I mean, obviously a huge opportunity. And I think, kind of like you said, we didn't really have the legacy infrastructure that ended up holding. I think at the time it held a lot of the larger facilities back in order to really optimize or maximize the potential that they could get from these digital cameras. They were using film transforms and all these other things, and I always approached the workflow in a way that made sense to me, in a way that looked good to me. And I didn't, Michael and I both, and all of us at Light Iron, just always did what we thought was best for the project, and not necessarily what worked for having a large company. Obviously now we're a large company, so we're negotiating that and still trying to preserve kind of our origin story and what's made us successful and what's got us here. And I think we're continuing to do that. But yeah, Social Network, it was a huge opportunity. I mean, it got nominated for an Oscar for best cinematography. Can't really ask for much more than that. Very well received, So yeah, and I think it was one of those movies where I feel like a lot of times people didn't take maybe Red seriously as a high end camera until I mean, there was other movies that were obviously very successful, but when the Social Network came out, I think that was
because
a movie that people really people really said, well, that's a good looking film. Those are, Jeff Cronowith and David Fincher, like that's really top.
It was but I think the next one was the girl. Was it the girl with the dragon tattoo, the remake?
Girl with the dragon tattoo.
That one completely nailed it. I mean, that movie, especially like, there was this beautiful contrast between, this kind of, the action and then the flashbacks, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I just, remember that, like, I just felt this is exactly why we have digital cinematography, because we can do that, right? On a celluloid, on a film shot movie, you wouldn't be able to go as easy from, this kind of, extremes and looks and stuff. And I think, where it kind of switched, right? Suddenly on that movie, we were like, wow, taken, by, my God, this was such an epic way of how to use color and to actually really showcase what camera is capable of. And to me, that also, like, I think that movie made a big impact, not just on in general. I think I remember a lot of directors would come to me and use that movie as a reference, go like, we, how about, the girl with the dragon tattoo, They always had felt that the original version was always better movie, but in terms of the look, they really liked the new one, They always like, this is such a good. And I think that was an incredible thing. But tell me what was very interesting, and somebody just mentioned this in the chat, which I think it's important to mention. So you started with the Final Touch, isn't it? That was the first system.
Yeah.
And then you went for Scratch.
Yep.
And then you went for Pablo.
Yeah, exactly.
Why Pablo? How did that all happen? Pablo is such an odd beast. Like, it was always.
Yes. Well, it's interesting because like it's almost like we never had a choice, because we started with, I started really with After Effects and Final Cut Pro is really where I started teaching myself how to color grade. Final Touch was the first dedicated program that I learned, which is really phenomenal. And then of course we evolved into Scratch, and then we evolved into Pablo. And for each time we decided to use those systems, the deciding factor was the people behind the company. So Roland Wood was the founder of Final Touch. And when we talked to him, he was completely dedicated to making Final Touch like a very successful program. And it was really just our conversations with him where it was just like, oh man, like he really gets it. He really gets what we're trying to do with this program. And eventually we had to evolve over to Scratch. Scratch was able to do things in real time because of how they overclock the CPU and everything like that. And so it was like that was very important, but it was really just, it was the guys at Assimilate that really understood like what we were trying to do. And then same thing with Quantel. Like when I met the guys, Milton Adam was working for Quantel at the time. And then when I actually talked to him, I was like, he gets it. Like he knows what I'm trying to do. I'm not trying to replicate the other companies. I'm not trying to build a Telecine Bay. He's like these guys, they really understand. And the whole creative team at Quantel at the time, which was 2006, they were brilliant, really amazing guys. And, they've also obviously since moved on and then we've evolved. And that's the reason why I'm on Baselight. It's the system's amazing. But then when you talk to the people that build the system and support the system and that are essentially supporting you, it's like, oh, I want to build a relationship with these developers because they get it. They understand. Like when I say I have a problem doing this, they don't go, oh, the system's working as intended. They go, oh, I understand. It's logical that when you hit this button, you're expecting it to do this, but it's doing this instead. And I see how we failed to make that clear in the software or whatever. That's just an example. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
but each time it was really just, it was saying the guys, the developers, they understand where I'm coming. Like they get me, they understand where I'm coming from. And so yeah, that's kind of been the story all along. I've just followed good people, and worked on the systems that they make.
Because at the end of the day, you have to make system work for you, right? Not like you work for the system, around the system. And I think that's the whole idea. And if you have somebody who's flexible enough to help you, like put things around in the way it works. But also, like, there is a thing about FilmLight, which, sometimes they're totally surprised with things that you didn't even think it was possible. You go like, oh my God.
Absolutely.
What?
Absolutely. And DI, it's a living thing. Like HDR and these, like, they didn't exist before, so it's like, there's constant improvements and constant changes and constant advances in technology where we're trying to do this. And so it's like, finding a good developer that like understands, like not only understands where you are, but like really sees like where the industry is going and where the craft is going. And I've always felt that with FilmLight, like they've totally answered in terms of like color space management and all this kind of like in the color science underneath. It's like they knew about the problem before I knew about the problem. And that's a rare thing where it's like, oh my God, I didn't even think of that. Thank God they built that tool. Like I've learned so much about texture, and I think we'll talk about texture when we get into some of the projects. But it's like
maybe
let's do that.
Let's talk about the projects, because I think this is really what everybody's like going to get excited about.
Great.
And like I think I want to start the first movie I want to talk about, and I'm just going to play quickly the trailer for everyone who hasn't seen it yet, so that we can get a little bit like, to kind of visual reference to what we're talking about. And the first example I would like to show to people is one of your recent projects. By the way, all three jobs we're going to talk today are very recent, guys. And, and I think, it's important for you to see what Ian's doing today, because, I think he's just getting better and better. And I think, I actually almost kind of, put it, when I saw the Tales from the Loop, I was like, how is this possible that this art house project lives on Amazon, right? On Prime, right? How is this? Whoever, has done it, and the art, design on that, the look, the vistas, the everything was just absolutely amazing. It completely consumed me. And I have to say, you must have guts, to kind of actually push a project that's going to look so not commercial in a way, to like an episodic TV. But let me first quickly play it, and I can't wait to talk to you about it, because I actually talked about this project and about look design session I did a few weeks ago, and which was the really reason why I really wanted to talk to you again. So, but let me just quickly just go and talk about it now. So 1 second, where is my Tales from the Loop? Playing now.
What do you do?
When someone says something's impossible, I prove it's possible.
Not everything in life makes sense. One day, many years from now, you'll wonder if this really happened. Or if it was a dream.
Everyone is connected to the loop in one way or another.
See, there's nothing to be afraid of.
Amazing. You're getting thumbs up for this already in the chat. I mean, this is such a, I mean, like, what a beautiful project, honestly. So tell me how, actually, I want to just first start, this series must have consumed you, because must have been a big project. How long did it take you? Like, not, I don't mean like a, like just how, from the beginning till the end, how long was the whole process?
Well, I mean, for beginning to end, I mean, I heard about it in February of 2019. I started talking to Jeff about it. I started coloring. He started shooting it kind of in the late winter of 2019, and then I started coloring it, I guess, probably August, September, and then kind of worked all the way through to the beginning of the year. Wow. So I guess like my involvement, I mean, like my involvement in terms of like the actual DI was probably 4 months.
Wow.
And it was always kind of an on and off thing, but it's 8 episodes, 8-hour-long episodes, so it's the equivalent of 4 feature films. So we treat it like 4 feature films, and yeah, so it was a huge job. It was really the whole last half.
But tell me, there was an interesting story how you met Jeff and how this whole thing happened, because this collaboration wasn't actually meant to be to begin with, isn't it? You kind of told me that story like once that you said.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've known Jeff since Social Network, so that I've known Jeff for 10 years, and we've done 5 films together. So Social Network, Dragon Tattoo, Gone Girl, a film called Hitchcock, and a movie called A Million Little Pieces. So when we were doing the DI for A Million Little Pieces, he shot that on Monstro, and I was working on the DXL kind of color science program at the time, right? So we were still kind of in the middle of developing the DXL and developing the color science that would go along with the DXL. And so I was just like, oh, if you like the Monstro, then you should check out the DXL, and so I was like kind of hyping the DXL and some of the Panavision optics, and so Jeff, just being awesome and gracious, gave DXL a trial run when he started prepping for Tales from the Loop, because Jeff Cronowith shot the first episode of Tales from the Loop. Mark Romanek directed it, wow. And Nathaniel Halpern was the showrunner for the whole series. So
beautiful.
So basically, yeah, like I when I heard about the show, I called Jeff, and I was just like, man, I would love to do this show. I just did another HDR show for Amazon called Too Old to Die Young. Like, I know the Amazon delivery, I've got it all figured out. I know all the hacks and stuff. So yeah, so we started working on the show kind of right after that.
Nice. And then a question came from the audience was like, was there any references that you were using when you were building that look?
Yeah, absolutely. The basis of the look, the grade is kind of the light iron color film look. But really the references were obviously Simon Stalenhag's paintings, his artwork, because Tales from the Loop is based off of his paintings. So it's really one of the only things that I've ever seen that instead of originating from a play or a story or whatever, it's from paintings. And so, but in terms of references, Tarkovsky, Bergman, and then Krasovsky, the three colors. You know, so it's really this kind of Scandinavian cinema, mid-century Scandinavian cinema, Russian cinema that is the real
mood.
You know, kind of the real DNA.
Yeah.
And then it's that. I mean, Mark Romanek, who is so huge in putting together the idea and the mood and the concept, you know, he didn't want it to like feel like it had a look on it. He just wanted it to be like this very natural beauty of nature and these characters, you know, against the nature. So I did kind of evolve kind of my light iron color, like kind of cinematic emulation, but I adapted it so that it kind of was a little more cleaner and a little more neutral than normal. I'm still doing a lot of the work that I do when I build light iron color. I use a matrix, and I kind of A/B the look that I'm doing with some print film emulation LUTs, but I'm basically rebuilding the print film emulation LUT just with controls that are inside of Baselight. So I'm not actually using the print, I'm not actually using the LUT, but I'm just kind of using that as inspiration. Yeah, and then dialing it. So I use the matrix to kind of swing, you know, kind of the greens and the magentas so that we get a nice cleaner skin tone line. And then I'm also like adjusting the densities of the different primaries, red, green, and blue. So I'm kind of bringing the luminance of red up and the luminance of green down. But those were the cinematic inspirations.
Adam Fury had a question, says, you know, what did you do to achieve, you know, such a beautiful like saturation, you know, on such a low luma, and he believes that there was a little glow in the skin tones as well, you know. So what do you say about that?
That's a great question. I didn't. So generally, as a philosophy, I try to avoid power windows and keys, you know, until a last resort, you know. So I'm very hesitant to like key a skin tone and then do a thing to it. Very, very hesitant, because I want it to always live in this natural world, and I want it to feel like the camera's just in this alternate universe where colors look different. I don't want it to feel like, oh, they did a thing to that image, you know. So so obviously a huge amount of the diffusion. No problem. Okay, a huge amount of the diffusion is just the lenses. They shot on Panavision Panaspeeds, which are a newer lens, and then of course, they supplemented that set with Primo 70s. So the optics are a huge part of it, but also I think the fact that we finished it in HDR and then made we finished it in HDR and then made the SDR version from that really helped to dial in the texture and the softness that you're seeing in the skin tones, and a lot of times in the highlights in the trees and things. Because when I'm compressing the ranges down, I'm using the texture tools to assign that contrast adjustment to just either the high frequency detail or the low frequency detail. So I'm actually, when I'm adjusting the HDR ranges, which largely involves, you know, stretching out the contrast, but then also compressing the highlights so that the skies and the practicals don't feel too strong. That compression, if I adjust the texture of that contrast adjustment, I'm able to pull it out of the high frequency detail, which it allows me to adjust the contrast but not affect the perception of sharpness.
Get it. That you see, this is completely new territory for most of us who have not necessarily worked with base light, because we haven't got these texture tools there at all, and the frequency separation tools. I mean, I love that.
Yeah.
I have to say, this was like for me, wow, also a mind-blowing kind of feature when I saw that, and I'm so happy you talk about it, because when I speak to colorists, they kind of seem to all use it, but nobody seems to kind of promote it as a tool, right? Everyone's kind of keeps it as a little secret, right? It's like, oh, we have this.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, man, that movie definitely has up. I mean, I think it should be up for award, for the achievement, because first of all, it was shot in such a crazy environment. Where was it that they shot it? What was it?
It was Winnipeg.
Winnipeg.
Yeah, they shot it in Winnipeg. And obviously, what's amazing about the way they shot it, and it's all, it's all, Nathaniel and Mark, and they decided to shoot it in Winnipeg, starting in the winter and then going into the summer. So over the course of the show, you see the snow melt, and you see the spring start and the little trees, and by the end of the series, it's like full on summer.
Yeah.
And so the first 4 episodes are really just the end and the thaw, the end of winter, the thaw, and then kind of that very first spring. So that was something that we really tried to preserve and promote throughout the show, is that the way the earth lived, the way the Winnipeg kind of naturally was. It was shot in Winnipeg, but they kind of moved the story to Ohio. So it takes place in Ohio, but it's completely informed by like Sweden.
Totally.
It's completely informed.
I was 100% convinced this is some Swedish there, looked like Sweden. Honestly, I never really thought this was shot here. It just looked and felt like Sweden all the time.
Yeah.
Like clouds and all the kind of cast. And
The joke, the joke that Ule Brett Berkland told me, which was one of the cinematographers, he shot 4 of the episodes. He said, like a local joke in Winnipeg is, when your dog runs away, you can watch it run away for 3 days, because the land is just so flat. You know what I mean? Like the land is just so flat, and there's nothing. And there's trees, but the air is so clear and the land is so flat that you see it in the show, that there's these vistas where it's just like a field of wildflowers, like to the horizon. And it's just unbelievable.
It is beautiful.
Yeah.
So beautiful. I'm going to just get one more question, and then we're going to quickly switch to the next project, because, it's a complete opposite. It's a complete opposite of look. I can't wait you guys to show you the second project. But one question came from Karim, and he asked, how do you choose the working color space in your projects? Because Baselight has got such a variety of options. So what do you do?
It's a great question. Yeah, I think that's a huge thing. So I always work in T-Log E-Gamut, which is essentially a FilmLight designed generic log encoding, so that your color graded master is in this log. And what I like about using T-Log as a working color space is that if I design a look, right, I get because what I'll do is I'll make a layer, I'll put a color matrix on it, maybe I'll have a hue shift, maybe I'll have some RGB curves in it, but I'll build a look for a show, and then I'll just paste that look over the whole show, and then I start my first pass going through doing balancing. So when I'm designing that look, it depends if I have a color curve or I have a hue shift or something in that look. It depends on what your working color space is. You're going to get a different result, right? So if my working color space was the camera provided log, if I make a nice looking look for log 3G10, and then I'm like, and then I move on to a Venice show, and then I'm like, oh, that look that I had was really great. I'm gonna copy paste that look onto the Venice encode. The S log 3 is a completely different color space than log 3G10. So converting everything to your T log working space means you can literally just design a look on one show and apply it to another, or multiple cameras all in the same show. But also, we're mixing and we're cooks in the kitchen. We're mixing and matching different recipes that have worked in the past to deliver what the filmmaker's asking us to do, right? So I'm like, oh, you know what? the look that I made on this other, you know, horror movie 6 months ago, that might work really well as a starting point for me to go into the direction that this DP is asking me to go into right now. And if it's a different camera input, if it's different log input, it's not going to give me the same output.
Way out. Yeah.
So that's a huge thing, is just is having that kind of generic mezzanine log encoding. Doesn't matter what source you're coming into, you know, you're working in that log. And then of course, since your color correction is log, you're not delivering to a specific display referred color space. So I can work, you know, I can work at home because I'm working at home in Rec 709, and then easily go into a theater or easily switch the monitor into HDR, and I have like essentially the same starting position. Yeah. I'm not using a LUT to invert it to. Yeah, yeah. It's just a, you know,
and it's a log that really works well as well. I mean, I noticed that as well. It has a, like, you know, it's close to log C, I believe, right? You know, it's kind of has a similar.
It's close to log C, but I think what's important is that E gamut is designed to be a working gamut. It's not designed as a camera
massive out gamut. Of range,
and that's one of the huge challenges that you get with a lot of the camera primaries, you know, or camera manufacturer primaries, is that you get weird triangles. You get a green that's all the way up here. Or you
exactly, and they're way out, things. And you go like, well, why do I even need this? I can't even see this stuff. It's outside of the kind
because
of
they're because they're just trying to they're just trying to build a container that matches what the camera's seeing, which is great. That's what you want. But you don't necessarily want to color grade.
That's a very good point.
As a working color space. So E gamut is a working color space that's, as far as I understand it, I'm sure someone from film may correct me, but as far as I understand it, it's a triangle that's concentric but just larger than 2020. So you don't have these like corners that are way out here on one primary but not on another. But it's still larger than 2020, so that you're able to produce a master that, you know, is larger than what you're delivering, or you know, you're working in a space that's larger than what you're delivering. But the
tonal mapping is more consistent as well, because you don't have, like, as you say, like some crazy green that is like super hard to bring down, and like, you know,
and then if you adjust the saturation, it's working on all the colors equally and not disproportionate.
That's a good point as well. Interesting. Very good. I'm going to play the next trailer now, and it's a movie that I selected because, okay, you tricked me on that one completely. I have to say, I was actually really, and has a little grain. I kind of, you know, at least from the trailer that I was able to get, I was thinking, God, this is a kind of, he did a film project, right? And you know, because it has this beautiful warmth, it has a complete opposite of the Tales from the Loop. And the movie is called Just Mercy. And it couldn't have been more relevant to what's happening right now. So I think this was. And, you know, I actually want to thank Warner Brothers for making it free for the last month, you know, because it was like, you know, they just opened it. Cool. It was so good. And actually, you know what? It's one of those movies that opens your heart, and you just really start believing in humanity again. So, guys, if you haven't watched it, you know, it's a wonderful weekend movie, like, you know, kind of stuff, not necessarily during the week, I'd say. But, you know, I want to just play you quickly the trailer, and then, you know, we'll have a quick chat about it. So this is Just Mercy.
Tell me everything that happened. The first time I visited death row, I wasn't expecting to meet somebody the same age as me. From a neighborhood just like ours. Could have been me, Mama.
But what you're doing is gonna make a lot of people upset.
You always taught me to fight for the people who need the help the most. Your life is still meaningful, and I'm gonna do everything possible to keep them from taking it. You don't know what you're into down here in Alabama when you're guilty from the moment you're born.
God.
Mr. McMillan.
We done here.
Mr. McMillan, please.
I was just about to give up when I got a call from a Harvard lawyer looking to start a legal center for inmates on death row. I was in before he even offered me the job.
You the lawyer?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much for driving all the way out here. Most lawyers barely make time to call.
I can't believe you talked to all my people and say you're gonna fight for me. I did. It mean a lot.
If you go digging in those wounds, you're gonna be making a lot of people very unhappy.
When people care about a thing that much, they'll do anything to get what they want.
When I first learned about all this, It was like looking at a river full of drowning people and not having any way of helping them.
You ain't quitting, is you? No, sir. Each of us is more than the worst thing that we've ever done. I know what it's like to be in the shadows.
It's my dad. He did nothing wrong.
It's never too late for justice.
You're the only one kid enough to fight for me.
If we can look at ourselves closely, we can change this world for the better. We all need grace. We all need mercy.
I got my truth back. You gave that to me. And ain't nobody gonna take that from us.
Wow, Ian. You know, the skin tone, and you know, like it's just epic. You know. And
Oh, cool. Thanks.
it has such a warmth in it. So do you mind, please, tell us that secret? You know, how did you get that? Please, like you know, like what was the trick?
Well, so that was shot on DXL. Brett Pollock, the cinematographer, director was Daniel Cretton. That you know, I think in terms of skin tone, first of all, I mean, it has to start. I think the criminally underrated element of the conversation around skin tone is makeup. There has to be good makeup to the beginning, because that is what you're like. You know, you're lighting the skin, but the makeup is on the skin. You know, so it's like it has to be good makeup in order to get good skin tone. And it's not something that it gets talked about a lot. And a lot of the camera tests that people do when they shoot a camera test is, you know, they shoot a model with no makeup on, and then they go to a movie set, and then like everyone has a ton of makeup on. So I think that's a key conversation, is that there is a difference between makeup, lighting, of course. You know, wider spectrum lights that don't have spiky sources. I mean, you know, we could talk about CRI and get really technical, but there are wider spectrum light sources and narrower spectrum light sources, and the narrower spectrum light sources can have a very spiky response on skin tone that you don't necessarily see with your eyes, but the camera sees it, because the camera just sees a slightly different spectrum than human beings see. So makeup and the light source, the spectral emission of the light source, those are obviously 1 and 2. Like if you don't have that, then there's nothing the colorist can do. But what I've done, and specifically what we did in Just Mercy, is again working with the matrix. So I'm shifting. I'm essentially subtracting green from the red, and with my matrix, so that if there's any sort of like greenishness due to a reflectivity of the skin tone, it's pulling over more into the orange as opposed to green. And then same on the other side with pulling magenta out. So I might add some red to the blue because sometimes a lot of times the fill side of a face might get a little magenta in the shadows, especially if you're cooling the scene down, you know, creatively. You might be adding magenta in the shadows because it's warmer and redder on the fill side. But if you cooled the scene overall, you're going to get some magenta in here. So if you're just using the matrix to tweak, to kind of, you know, tweak your levels, you're kind of narrowing the band, so to speak, of that kind of yellow. So you're getting more of a straight red, which also incidentally gives you more luminance, because it gives you more luma response to your red channel. So you get a brighter skin tone relative to your other colors. So when you're messing with your white
populated
balance,
the red channel,
you're gonna get a little bit more volume. It's the same trick people do when they shoot black and white. They might put a red filter over the camera so that you get more red, which is skin tone. So the skin tones are brighter if you're shooting in black and white.
And that works for all skin tones, or do you have to do something different with darker?
Yeah. No, I mean, I find that, you know, no matter what your complexion is, people are there's a very narrow range on the vector that, you know, no matter what that you kind of your base tone is, you're going to get that same, very similar hue. So pulling in, using the matrix to kind of narrow the band really helps, and then you're able to underneath that just kind of work your white balance, and then just kind of dial in exactly where you want. So I think like the last shot of Michael B in that trailer, like his skin is very warm. There's some kind of greenish. It's like when he's talking to the to Congress at the end of the movie.
Oh yeah,
like he's like a really nice warm color, but like his eyes are neutral, his teeth are neutral, his shirt looks like a very natural color, and that's how you get very So I'm not doing a lot of tomfoolery with the RGB gains. It's really just using a matrix to kind of compress that band, and then you're working on the white balance underneath it, and then just kind of everything falls into place.
So basically what you're saying is that you also kind of shift the white point as well.
Oh yeah, that was the other thing. I pitched that to Brett. Brett and I have done like 10 or more movies together. So we talk a lot about like white point, and then we also talk a lot about like the flow of like scene by scene, like what the flow is in terms of like warm scene, cool scene, warm scene, cool scene. And one of the things that he wanted to do was kind of narrow that rhythm a little bit more, so it was more consistent. Because like in the past, it's nice to have like a really warm scene, and then when you cut to a cool scene, you really feel that it's cool. Or maybe it's not that cool, but because you've like temporarily kind of worked on your rhythms of warm and cool scenes throughout the film, you're able to kind of have that kind of like extra dimension of color to your film. It's not just about the image, but it's about the image over time and how the scenes flow one into another. So Brett actually wanted to narrow the band of this film and make it a little bit more tight.
Yeah,
make it a little bit more tight.
And that's that filmic trick. That's where you trick me. But I was like, we had last year, we had Josh Pines as a guest, and I think I remember he said something. He said, life is D60, not D65. And I think we should never work in D65, he said. And it just got stuck with me. And now
that's a great quote. I agree.
When you say that, it's just like you just kind of that warmth that is throughout the movie is really just this beautiful white kind of point shift that actually just moves so nicely, like the whole hue in the right direction. I absolutely love it.
Yeah, so I pitched that to Brett when I heard his note on kind of keeping it more consistent and narrowing the swing that we go throughout the movie. I was just like, maybe we want to do this film. It's like American South, like the early 90s. Like maybe we want to do like a D60 white point instead of a D65. And then just everything feels like it has a little bit of warmth to it. And even the cooler scenes, even those blue scenes, it's at a D60 white point, so it has that warmth to it, and you really feel it. You see it in the skin tones, and you see it in like their when they have like their prison uniform, which is this white thing. It was beautifully production designed, but I think Brett's like a real master of shooting. I keep teasing him. I'm like, you're a master at shooting white rooms, because like a lot of the film, is just the prison cell or whatever, or just
really boring.
And so and these rooms, there's nothing in it, and that's the design, and that's part of the oppression of prisons, and so he was able to capture it, but we're still able to have a film that we can visually engage in, even though it is kind of
shadow softness. I love it.
I think that's one of the hardest things to convey in filmmaking, is this sense of boringness or sense of monotony in a film. And prison films are hard to do that, because you're like, you don't want to make the film boring or the film monotonous, but you also have to convey the characters are going through this all these years in prison, and you know what I mean, and how it's wearing them down. So it's like as a character point and an emotional beat, you have to hit that, but it's really difficult to portray that in a film and not make the film itself suffer.
Audience away from it, because
exactly.
I love it. Ian, this is great. I mean, you're getting amazing, like comments on chat.
Oh,
And,
cool.
and by the way, Mark Todd Osborne is with us as well.
Oh, Mark, yeah, hey.
Good, And I just want to say while we're on it, like we have had a Mark as a guest as well last year, and next week we're gonna publish his talk. Like we're gonna start publishing these talks again, like like a republishing. So, and guys, by the way, if you know anybody who really you think should benefit from what Ian just said, and not just we're not gonna just keep it as a live. We're gonna start making recordings available for you to use it as a training reference for later. But we have just enough time to show my absolute favorite. And like I have to say that if I was to go to the cinema tomorrow, let's say cinemas open or whenever they open, and I'm standing and I can watch Christopher Nolan's Tenet or this movie which is called Unhinged, I would go and watch Unhinged. I would. And I would say I'll watch Tenet later, because this to me is I was like, what is going on? And again, Ian, it is like it's a look of a massive blockbuster. It's a big movie, feels strong, grabs you, you really you feel like this is such an amazing, strong and action and everything in it is just feels so big. I have to say, please let me just play the trailer because I spoke to many of my friends and no one even knew about it because, probably there was not a lot of promotion going, whatever happened. You guys have to see the trailer first, and then when we start talking about it, it is all going to fall into place. So very quickly, this is the Unhinged trailer.
Come on, man. Go!
You know what a courtesy tap is, young man? Sounds like this. It's light. It's friendly. I'm sure that's what your mom meant to do.
No, it's not. Mom!
Having a kind of a hard time lately. I'm sorry. Accept my apology?
Just ignore him.
Well, if you could just do the same, we could press reset.
I don't have anything to apologize for. Can you go, please?
Ma'am, are you okay?
I'm pretty sure the guy in that truck's following me.
He's road raging.
Why don't you just chill, man? Go your own way.
I don't think you really know what a bad day is. But you're gonna find out.
That man stole my phone. Andy?
I'm sitting here. I'm waiting for you.
Whose phone is this?
I'm right across from your friend.
Hey, listen to me. He's not a friend, okay? He's a psycho who came after me today.
This is where your first lesson begins.
Give me my phone.
Put him back on this goddamn phone!
No, I can't do that.
What do you want?
I need you to learn what a bad day really is. And I need you to learn how to say you're sorry. And you're gonna learn. Through violence and retribution. Sounds like you're waking up.
I'm wide awake.
You better bring your A game. Because you're gonna need it.
Unbelievable. I mean, Ian, this is just getting better and better and better. This is why I didn't want to spend too much time talking about, Girl with the Dragon Tattoo and all of this. Look at the work you're doing today. I mean, look at this. This is just, I don't know. Do you feel proud of it when you look at these trailers? How do you feel about it? Tell me.
Well, it's interesting. Trailers all are just slightly different than the film themselves, right? They have to live in a different world. Generally speaking, all trailers are a little bit brighter and a little bit poppier. I call it like trailer world, so it's like they don't always, I mean, it's a pretty good, I mean, it's good to talk about and look at and stuff like that. But when you actually sit in the film itself, it's a different experience. It's playing over a longer period of time. You're adapting to your environment, so you can go darker, you can go, drearier. With a trailer, you have to kind of keep it light and keep it fast. So a trailer grade is always a little slightly different.
Yeah. But it doesn't. It can't.
Yeah.
But that the art of trailer grading is that you don't change the look. You adapt it. But
yeah.
We had a
Exactly.
if you know Lynette, she does most of the Sony trailers, and this is what she's so good at. She would grade a trailer, and you wouldn't know it was regraded, if you know what I mean. Like it just still felt the same. There is definitely an art to that. But what I'm saying is like it doesn't really take you away from the whole kind of concept of how this was done. Now, very natural light here, not overlit, no beauty. And I believe that when I see Russell Crowe, I think I'm gonna have to go and start doing some exercises soon, because this kind of COVID lockdown I'm gonna start looking like him. So.
Yeah. It works. Yeah.
He was huge.
It works for his character.
Yeah, my God, he's huge. I love that. But tell me.
Well, I think he gained a lot of weight for this other movie that he did, where he played Roger Ailes. So I think he was coming right off of that. So he gained weight for another movie, but it really worked.
We worked there, amazing. Okay, but tell me now this: how was this shot? And tell me the process. I really want to understand now one thing that I personally want to know. Give me now the process of this. You got on that movie, and then give me the process of what, or maybe give me an ideal scenario as well. Like, how do you think it's the best way to approach that look development, look creation? What do you think is really the best scenario? That, like, I think it's generally for all filmmakers now. What, in your experience, is the best approach? How to do it?
I mean, the best way to do it, and I really learned this through working with the DXL, is for a colorist to get involved in prep. It's so rare that we are involved in pre-production, but I've been lucky enough that on some jobs, they bring me in during pre-production, during prep, and I sit with the director and the DP, and they talk about kind of looks that they want, and then if we're lucky enough to have some camera footage, I can build a couple of different looks, and then if everything works out, that gets made into a show LUT that gets loaded into the camera. And then when they go and they shoot the movie, they're shooting it through that look that I built in prep. They're monitoring on set. The dailies are being made with it. Editing is being done, through the look that was done with that LUT. And then when we come in to do the DI, I've got my original project, so I can kind of invert and remove different things that maybe aren't working for the final. But I've got my original project that I can slap on the whole film. And then we keep working that way. I find that a lot of the challenges that arise during DI are really just kind of, sometimes they're political in origin, because the DP and the director now want to do something creative with the look, but maybe a studio person or whomever is deciding that, like, oh, but the movie tested really well and during our test screening, so let's not change the look, and just getting different people on the same page again when it's kind of you're at the end of the process is difficult. So on the rare occasion, and not so rare anymore, but on those occasions where I'm involved on the prep and we set a look and we do something cool and strange and weird in prep, and then that look is preserved throughout the whole pipeline, the finish is so easy, because it's just a matter of like, oh, this is what we like, this is what we designed originally, let's figure it out. When productions use the standard LUT from a website or from a manufacturer, that's fine. It gives you a good view of the data that you're collecting, but it doesn't have a look on it. And when you try to create that look in the DI, you always get pushback from somebody, and the bigger a film is, the more people are at the table that are weighing in on decisions. On little indie movies, it's usually just me and one other person, me and the director, who's also like self-financing it. But on a larger studio movie, you've got lots of people involved. And if you're trying to change the look,
that's the worst, you know.
It just becomes a political game, you know.
Oh
and,
man,
and ideally, you know, you'd have a guy like Fincher that's just going to say, this is what I want. This is how it's going to be.
But there's very few guys like Fincher. There's very few.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, there's very few directors that you know have that voice. You know.
Well, and David has a track record that he did over, you know, he built up.
And also he has a right to, you know, he has a very strong opinion about the look. You know, some directors don't. You know.
Yeah, that's true too. That's true too. Yeah.
You know, some directors are like, you know, okay, you know, they kind of, you know, they have too many good things going on with sound mixing and other stuff. You know, they kind of just let this discussion a little bit pass them by. You know, and then you know, and then the latest thing that happened, you know, just, you know, maybe 6 months ago, that cinemas created a group that really called NATO, by the way, which is kind of such a stupid name, and they said, oh, we're gonna tell productions how we think movies should look, and we were like, wait, as if we didn't have enough people telling us, you know. I know that it was like, you know, Dolby, even Dolby was suggesting what we should be grading it like, right? And then Dolby were like super cool about it. They were like, just no, it was just technically blah, blah. So they didn't get involved for hard in it. Then yes, you have the studio, then you have that showrunner, then you have blah blah blah. And then now the cinema also has an opinion. They said, wait, well, this has to stop somewhere, right? Has to stop. But tell me about Unhinged. What was the camera on that?
So Brendan Galvin was the DP, and he shot the whole film on Venice with I don't know what lenses they were. I know they're spherical lenses. He shot the whole movie at Venice, and I think he really utilized the faster sensitivity of the Venice and shot a lot of the film at, you know, like 1250.
1250.
You know, because a lot of it was in, you know, it's a lot of the film takes place in a car shooting, you know, kind of a person that is, you know, they're in a car, so there's not a lot of places you can hang lights, and it's just kind of the natural light coming in from the outside, and things are blowing out in the background. So shooting at 1250 really helps with that. And he really wanted me, you know, it was his idea to kind of create this dark, cool kind of vibe, even though the whole movie is day exterior essentially. And so through our talks, you know, we really focused on trying to communicate this feeling of like the day after a storm, you know. So if you imagine like a really violent thunderstorm, this is the day after, you know, the streets are still very damp and maybe there's some downed trees, but there's this kind of overwhelming sense of like devastation and destruction that had just happened, and this is the day after. And so we decided to go with this kind of darker, cooler look, where we kind of split the exposure, you know, so like no one's really at key, everyone's at least a stop under key, and then the backgrounds, of course, are, you know, kind of blowing out or are over. So no one's quite lit, everyone's just a little bit outside of the light, you know, which also adds to this kind of sense of chaos and sense of anything that can happen. And then we did like a half bleach bypass with the soft toe. So it's not that crunchy black bleach bypass. It's kind of the soft toe bleach.
So the blacks look are not really lost. You know, they still have
they're soft. Yeah, there's a soft toe to it, but you feel the bleach in the skin, and you feel the bleach in the highlights.
And what about the HDR of this movie?
Oh yeah, the HDR, you know, came together. I mean, we were grading for theatrical because they wanted to be the first movie that was released theatrical after the COVID-19 lockdown. So they were committed to a theatrical release. So I would grade it here in Rec 709, and then we built like a little bubble where only I would go into the theater at work. No one else was allowed into the theater, and I just would go in and check it to make sure that the projector.
So wait. So you did the Dolby Vision theatrical grade in Vine Street in the theater, right?
Yes, that we did. But what I did is I did the HDR grade here, and we rendered out the 1008 HDR grade. I loaded those files back in, and I built the whole project, basically converting a 1000 nit pass to the 108 Dolby. So I built that project here, looking at the 1000 nit and saying, okay, but you know, save the settings for a 108, and then we sent that project over to Vine Street, and I was able to go in and watch the movie play down on the Vine Street Dolby Vision projector. So that was, I mean, amazing. That's the best way to watch a movie.
No.
Yeah.
I have to
had
say,
108 nits,
oh,
theatrically projecting with a laser projector.
that
Pretty
little
nice.
cinema there is just, I think for a colorist, there is nothing, I think, more rewarding than great for that.
Yeah.
You know, I think this is the best way how to see movie, you know, period.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
That's
It's pretty phenomenal. Have you seen those like LED walls, like the Onyx wall?
I did.
And
But you know, my problem is that when I saw them, they were playing some Japanese style kind of demo footage that was just too bright and too much, right?
Oh.
You know, and actually I went to the roundabout down in Santa Monica because they have a Samsung one. You know, I went to Sony in Glendale. I went to see that one and the one in Santa Monica. And you know, every time I kind of felt like I haven't seen a content, you know, demo that they showed it to me that really made me feel like, wow, this is like, you know, using this dynamic range in the right way. You almost show me how bright it is, but I don't really get excited about brightness anymore. You know, it's not really what excites me. Give me some good contrast, something, you know. So I don't know. I'm still kind of to be sold on that. You know, right now I just love this kind of whole concept. Look how easy it was for you. You took your, you know, 10,000 PQ timeline. You had just to transform to 108, right? And you had this beautiful tonal response on the screen. Where about these monitors, I don't know whether they have figured out, you know, what contrast curve we should be using, how best to map the dynamic range, where is the fall off? There is no fall off on them, you know, like do you feel like they're peaking, you know, whatever happened, you know. So they need to get somebody smart, you know, and help them make them look good, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that's the challenge with HDR is that I never want anything that I grade in HDR to feel like a tech demo. You know, it shouldn't ever. But I don't want to artificially clamp it. You know, I don't want the highlights to just clamp at 250, just because it's gonna. I know if I did, I mean, you can make it look great and it would be awesome. But I think it's really important to have just, you know, the image can like live in a comfortable zone, but it's really nice if you're able to get those like speculars to really stretch. You know, you really feel the volume and you really feel the 3D, the depth of the image if you're able to kind of, you know, get very, very high numbers out of those speculars. So maybe your diffuse white is low, but if you can allow your speculars to really stretch, you really feel the volume a lot of times.
Yeah. But that's a tricky thing, you know. I have to say that, you know, that's where Dolby, you know, with this whole kind of color science and with the PQ and everything that they did to create that, you know, infrastructure and that whole process have succeeded. You know, it just works really well for filmic content. You know, that's the kind of thing. You know, by the way, you know, I mentioned Lynette, and she says hi. She was with us as well, you know. So
cool.
yeah, so we're here. So anyway, we're kind of, you know, a little bit over with our time. Ian, guys, come on, give us like a big kind of, you know, high fives to Ian on the chat. I just really want you all to thank him for being like so like open and sharing this absolutely unbelievable, great tips of how he works. I told you he has his style that he built himself. You know, he doesn't, you know, and it works incredibly, and you see the variety of his incredible work, and he's the nicest guy as well. I think this is Ian. Please stay like that. Don't, you know, please don't become a big ego like some other people can when they become famous as you are. You know, I love you for that.
Yeah.
I think I love you, and I love the fact that you have given us your time and you were so open about it. And this is really, you know, how the colorist community should be, like very supportive of one another. So I can't thank you enough for being part of this meetup.
Awesome. Thank you very much. No, this was fun.
And everybody's like giving you a big thanks up and thank yous for that. You know, I think, you know, this was great. I learned a lot as well. You know, it's just every day there's something, you know, to learn. And I can't wait to have you again, actually. You know, please, like, you know, I will be following to see what you're doing and what's happening.
Oh, cool.
And you know, this was such a pleasure. And guys, yeah, I'm going to leave this on YouTube, and we're gonna have it also like somewhere a link on our website as well. And please use this meetup as a great reference. You know how to basically work, and how to come up with your own ways of doing things as well. And two things we really, well, three things we really have to figure out. Sometimes the hardest route pays off. In your case, Ian, it definitely did. You went the hardest possible route of fucking running your own business and building a post-production company in Hollywood. You must have asked yourself a few times, is there any easier way for me to make money and living than this, right? The second, I have to say that, being brave enough to develop your style and technique of working is incredibly important. And number three, don't get stuck in a single style. Be open to understand the story and be able to build a look, and there is no better example than your work to how you support story with your looks and with colors. So, fantastic. Thank you so much for everything.
Thank you. Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
And guys, thank you for being with us. Actually, I think we wouldn't have been doing it if you wouldn't be dialing in. So it's always good to see you in really big numbers. And and I can see Dario said hi as well. So good to see you guys. And yeah, we will be back. I'm not sure exactly. I haven't managed to confirm my next week, but as soon as we got the next Thursday confirmed, I will publish again details. And yeah, we will be back online soon. I think this is so valuable for all of us. Thank you all, and enjoy the rest of your day or evening or night or morning, wherever you are. And yeah, keep following us, and see you soon. Thank you all. Cheers. Ian, thank you again. That was amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.